Friday was the 14th, and later that night on the 14th, Kash Patel tweeted, it's long, but I'll give you the highlights. There were over 480 FBI employees involved in this investigation. They conducted over 1,000 interviews, addressed over 2,000 public tips, analyzed data from 13 seized digital devices, reviewed nearly 500,000 digital files, collected, processed, synchronized hundreds of hours of video footage, analyzed financial activity from 10 different accounts, examined data associated with 25 social media or online forum accounts, examined over 20 online accounts around the possibility of Thomas Crooks. He's not necessarily saying that it was his. Data extracted from over a dozen electronic devices, examination of numerous financial accounts, over 1,000 interviews for him, around him, the investigation. And then he goes on to repeat himself and finally says, all this revealed Crooks had limited online and in-person interactions, planned and conducted the attack alone, and did not leak or share his intent to engage in the attack with anyone. And then interestingly, Eric Trump, who in his book Under Siege and separately has been publicly casting doubt on this investigation, saying, I don't know why we know so little about this guy Crooks. I know, it's suspicious to me. Responded to Kash Patel same night saying, thank you, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. This is good to see. That's weird too. I don't know. It sounds a little perfunctory. It sounds like there was a coordination. This is just my complete speculation, unsupported for the record, that they've reached a determination on why it's not in anybody's interest to say more, and they've convinced Eric Trump of that fact. And then your mind goes to, well, what could that be? Who could possibly have been behind it, right? A foreign government with whom we don't want a war, someone who it's better, let's just totally speculation, not supported. Let's say it's China, and even President Trump, he's trying to have a good relationship with China. It doesn't make anybody's life better for us to declare war with China and go into some sort of extended foreign policy, stiff arm of China. This is completely speculative. There is no evidence it was China. But I'm just saying there could be a situation like that where they know something that they think net justifies not sharing any of this. You go.
I don't think there is such a, I'm not saying you're wrong in your speculation that they're thinking that way. I don't think there is, however, a justification no matter what. So let's just remember two things. First of all, the only conceivable justification for not releasing information to the public that they have in their possession about who this person was and what motivated him is whether there's an ongoing investigation, meaning they're still trying to figure out whether he worked with anyone else, individuals, groups, organizations, foreign countries. In other words, a conspiracy. But they're affirmatively stating that's not the case. They're saying that nobody recruited him, nobody trained him, nobody worked with him. He was a lone wolf. He was a lone actor. They're not being silent about that. They're affirmatively saying that. So once they say that, there is no more excuse to withhold information that they have about the shooter from the public because there's no investigation to jeopardize. The other thing that I find very disturbing, Megyn, and Tucker alluded to this in his report, is that throughout 2024, we were constantly hearing leaks at the same time that there were a lot of people trying to agitate for a war with Iran, that the Iranian government was behind these assassination plots, that the Iranian government was trying to assassinate Trump. And anybody who knows President Trump knows that if you want to provoke him into a military conflict with the country, all you have to do is tell him that that country is behind an effort to try and kill you. And that's even more so once a bullet whizzes past your head and comes very close to ending your life. Were those claims true? Were they fabricated to try and lure him and our country into another war? We know that he did bomb Iran, but not nearly as much as people would have liked, but he still did bomb it. That's why there's a lot of important questions surrounding this. And while it may be true that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and others in the government think it's somehow best that, like children, we just not be exposed to unpleasant facts, that's not how our country is supposed to work. Absent some extremely compelling reason, namely protecting the innocent or exposing sources or impeding an investigation, none of which they're saying is true, we have an absolute right to these answers.
Yeah, we do. We have a right to them. That's the galling part. We do have a right to them. This is our country. Like anybody who's running the country, or whether it's at the congressional level or even in the White House, is temporary. They're there temporarily, and we're grateful for their service. But it's our country, and we have a right to know. We have future generations who are going to run for these offices, who should know what the risks are, who should know who our enemies are. There's all sorts of reasons why these things are in the public eye and in the public interest, and we deserve disclosure on them. As you point out, the JFK assassination happened before we were either one of us was born, and still, you can't go 12 months without having big breaking news on that assassination. I do want to spend a minute on the Miranda Devine reporting from the New York Post. She writes as follows: Thomas Crooks appears to have been interested in, quote, furries. For the listening audience, I think we know what this is now, but just in case, we have new people. A furry is like a person who identifies as some sort of animal, and they wear animal costumes. They're like half human, half animals, and it's a sexual fetish for most. I suppose there's some small contingent for whom it does not have a sexual element, but the overwhelming number of people who consider themselves a furry have this link to like kink and fetish websites, and it is an offshoot of the trans movement. They're very closely linked, and it happens to have been the main thing of the boyfriend of Charlie Kirk's alleged shooter. His alleged shooter was a guy named Tyler Robinson, and he was living with and dating a trans-identified furry. And now we find out Thomas Crooks, the Trump attempted assassin, appears to have been interested in furries and was exploring gender identity, per the New York Post. He described himself with the pronouns they, them on the platform DeviantArt, which is one of the biggest online hubs for furry art and the furry community. 2 accounts linked to the Crooks' primary email were found on DeviantArt under usernames Epic Microwave and The Pick Microwave. The account suggests he had an obsession with scantily clad cartoon characters sporting muscle-bound male bodies and female heads. This is sick, but if true, part of a pattern now, Glenn. I mean, I talked about the Nashville school shooter, and then we saw it wasn't a furry, but it was a trans with the Minneapolis school shooter, the Charlie Cook shooter, and his lover into the trans furry culture. And now Thomas Crooks, the guy accused of trying to assassinate Donald Trump, into furry culture and the trans thing. I'm sorry. Look, I know a lot of the audience is going to be saying that's a cover, right? Like they're dangling the shiny thing over here. And I'm open-minded to that totally. But I'm really open-minded to it being totally true as well, because we've seen it time and time again. And why are we only learning about that right now?
Well, I mean, I think that's a question for the FBI. And this is the thing, I think we have to be a little bit careful just because I don't know if you saw, but it was like a week ago, Bill Maher had on his show a couple of guests who were more or less his generation, and they were trying to talk about Nick Fuentes, and they were talking about grapers. And they were like, what is it? They barely knew what it was. They were like trying to explain it. Their explanation was, it just sounded like an old person trying to describe young internet culture in a way that was very embarrassing. This like online ethos and culture, it's almost like a chicken and egg question. Like, does it take mentally ill people and attract them to it? Or does once people experience it, does it turn them mentally ill? And I think there's a lot. In general, I think that when you have these kind of shooters, people who go to schools and shoot up schools, or people who attack government institutions, or people who try and blow the head off of a former president, somebody who's leading the polls to be president, mental illness has to be part of it. And again, if this is part of how the mental illness manifested, and I do think it's something that we ought to think about and look at, because there is some indicia that these two things are correlated. I want to know that from the government. Like, I want to see the full picture. I think Miranda Devine is a great reporter. I'm not at all suggesting that she's done anything at all. But I'm just saying, when you're a reporter, and you know this well, you have a source, or, maybe the source is feeding you stuff that they want you to know, even though it's true, but it's somehow selected or handpicked. Maybe it's not entirely true. This is why the government, which is the one that has the power to get all this information, has subpoena power, surveillance equipment, everything. They're the ones with the information. I want the answers from them. Like, is this true? Was this an interest of his? Was it formative in his life? What was his politics? What was his motive? Who did he talk to? All of these. The key question, did the FBI know about him beforehand? Was he known to the government or to local authorities? These are questions we can only get from the government. Huge credit to Tucker and Miranda for telling us things that we didn't know that we should know, but these answers have to come from the FBI.
Yes, but don't you find it suspicious? And I second everything you said. I love Miranda Devine. She's a national treasure. But don't you find it suspicious that this drops the Monday after the Friday that Tucker's report drops?
Yes. Yes. Well, and also, again, if we're looking at things politically, when the Charlie Kirk shooter was apprehended, the alleged Charlie Kirk shooter, the FBI rushed, Kash Patel himself did, to make clear the link between the alleged shooter and his partner who was trans or undergoing some sort of transition in their immersion in trans culture. That was something that the government, ideologically would want known. Why wasn't that true here? If they suspect that the person who tried to murder Donald Trump became very close to had some kind of connection to the trans community or gender identity ideology or whatever, why did we learn about this only a year later after Tucker raised a whole set of other questions that were unrelated? All of them could be true. Most of them could be true. But I agree with you completely. Like, did Miranda Devine get that information from the government because they want to redirect our attention over to there, something that's more politically palatable to distract attention from the questions Tucker raised? That's why I'm just hesitant to jump to these conclusions and start analyzing the phenomenon in the context of the shooter until we have reliable information.
Here's an even scarier thought than it's the FBI trying to distract us from the Tucker report. Again, we're speculating here. The audience is with us by this point. They know this. That the FBI didn't find either one of these. Like, to me, that's even scarier that they didn't find this, because Miranda describes her reporting as based on, quote, an enterprising source who uncovered Crooks's hidden digital footprint. Now, Tucker did not have any of this in his Friday report. There was nothing about trans furry culture. So his information, uncovered by a pretty comprehensive search of the guy's digital footprint, that we don't know whether the FBI had that or not, but didn't have this. And Tucker would have told us if this were in there. I feel certain. I don't think he would have hidden this.
No.
And then she comes out with this. So who is the enterprising source? I mean, normally you might say a source close to the investigation, a government source, a source in a position to know. If you're dealing with somebody right on the investigation who doesn't want to be identified. But this actually doesn't read to me like an FBI person, an enterprising source who uncovered Crooks's hidden digital footprint. That to me sounds odd. I don't know what to believe. I don't like any of this. My friend just lost her ring. She went to replace it. She realized it was a gold ring. The price of it has gone up like 25% since she bought the ring a year ago. That's because gold is on the march upward. And it is the one time of year that Birch Gold Group gives away free gold with every qualifying purchase. That's right, for Black Friday, when you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold, Birch Gold will send free gold to your home for every $20,000 purchased. Gold started this year around $2,600 an ounce. By October, it was over $4,000 an ounce. Why? Global uncertainty. 2025 has been defined by trade wars, central banks are pulling from the US dollar as the global reserve currency, and military tension continues to build. Gold thrives in times of uncertainty, and if you are looking to diversify your savings, Birch Gold can help you. Plus, now through November 30th, get free gold, I say, with a qualifying purchase. Just text MK to the number 989898 to claim your eligibility and for a free info kit on gold. But your opportunity for free gold with purchase will end on November 30th, so don't wait. Text MK to the number 989898 for full details. Message and data rates may apply. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.